One of the significant failings of the fitness and nutrition industries is with obesity, with people who are significantly overweight and have been struggling for years. And this clearly goes way beyond simply eat less and move more and do some exercise, because that's what everybody says, and it's clearly not having much of an impact on the end result. So I just wanted to do this video series explaining the top #1 priorities that need to be addressed when it comes to obesity to help people actually make a real and lasting impact in their lives. In the hopes that people who might be watching this, who might have been struggling for years, can start to develop some hope and can start to see a much more compelling future for themselves. But also for those great practitioners out there, trainers and nutritionists and so on, who might benefit from some additional tools in their toolbox. So what I want to focus on in this particular video is moving somebody from a place of shame to a place of motivation, because there's a huge amount of shame associated around obesity and it's debilitating. And some people might look at that and they might say, well, you should be ashamed and you deserve to be ashamed, because that's exactly what's going to give you the kick up the arse that you need in order for you to do something about this. But that's not how shame works. Shame makes you want to hide. At best, it makes you aggressive and defensive. But in most instances, it makes you want to hide and retreat. It doesn't mobilize and motivate you. So we need to take people from a place of shame to a place of motivation. And the way that we bridge that gap is with vulnerability. Now, shame is a two-way street. So somebody could encourage you to feel shame. So at worst, they might be ridiculing you or telling you everything that you've done wrong and so on. But sometimes even well-meaning people can encourage you into shame purely because they're operating at a very superficial level. Perhaps they're only really talking about diet and exercise and they're kind of skirting around the edges, and they don't give you the feeling that they genuinely care. So if you're a professional in this area, the most important place to start is to make sure that you show that genuine and sincere care and interest and compassion for your client. However, like I said, shame is a two-way street. So, because sometimes people will say things like, oh, they're making me feel ashamed, or these feelings just descend upon me. They just come out of nowhere. But once you start to understand more about this, you start to realize that shame is an emotion that you have to go to and indulge in order for it to have its full effects. And the antidote to this is vulnerability. Because when you allow your true self to be seen, when you're willing to be open, to be honest, and to be vulnerable, to display that vulnerability and to look people in the eye and to talk about you, then you have no need for shame anymore. But people tend to hide and want to hide away from vulnerability because it's scary and because so many of us are afraid of being judged. And so the belief being that if I can hide away and people can't see everything that's going on with me, then they won't judge me for it. But guess what? People are gonna judge you anyway, whether you're vulnerable or not. But ironically, what you'll find is that when you are vulnerable, people love you for it, because we love people who are open, who are honest, who are real. And so we're drawn to people who are vulnerable and willing to be vulnerable. And then from that place, when you are willing to do that, when you're willing to be vulnerable, it becomes so much easier to get into motivation from that place. So let's talk about motivation real quick. So first of all, we've got two types of motivation. We've got push motivation and pull motivation. So push motivation is all of the pain that you associate to how upsetting things are and the things that you don't like and that you want to move away from. Now, when you're in a place of shame and you think about those upsetting things, you very easily go into despair and you just want to hide away and retreat. However, when you step into vulnerability, when you're willing to be vulnerable, you're willing to look people in the eye and to be open and honest about what's going on, then it's so much easier to use that emotional pain in a useful way, to get mobilized and determined by it, because you have no need to hide anymore. Now, in addition to this, obviously we also, at the other end of the spectrum, we absolutely need what we call pull motivation, which is all of the benefits that you stand to gain, all of the things that you want to add and improve in your life, all of the things that you stand to gain as a result of making this transformation in your life. And it's so important that people are able to perceive a compelling future for themselves, because when somebody can't see a compelling future, again, they just slip back into despair. So in order to support this, it's also critical that we're able to cultivate and nurture belief and faith, which is something that we'll cover in another video as part of this series. But the point I want to make in this video is that when you're willing to step into vulnerability, then it becomes so much easier to use pain and your push motivation in a useful way instead of a debilitating way. And that's when it does become the kick up the arse that you really need. However, if you focus on that push motivation and then you dwell on it and you indulge in it and you focus on how hard everything's been, that's when you can slip back into despair and hopelessness. So the journey that you need to take yourself on is you need to go from shame to vulnerability, to be willing to be open, to be seen, look people in the eye and to show your true nature and your true self. From there, it becomes very easy to, or a lot easier, to focus on your pain, your push motivation, and to get mobilized by it, to look at it, get determined to say never again, and then make a clear decision and distinction to move in a different direction. And then you can focus on the pleasure that you're moving towards and get excited about transforming yourself, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well.